Hello viewers, before we continue with the part 2 of this amazing story, first check out the part 1 first, by clicking the link above for better understanding. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe today and turn on the notification bell, watch to the end and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Ifeoma used the time to catch her breath. She walked her daughters to school herself. She even started cleaning up her husband's main office, planning to reopen it in her own name. It felt like healing. But unknown to her, Felix wasn't sleeping. He was working behind the scenes, calling old friends, bribing petty officials, and digging through her past, hoping to find anything to destroy her. And then, he found something. Late one night, a knock came on the gate. The gateman opened it and returned with an envelope. It was addressed to Mrs. Ifeoma Toby, urgent. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from a government agency, Department of Land Allocation. Her breath caught. The letter said, "We have received a petition that this residence sits on disputed land. Due to this, we are launching an investigation. You are to appear at our regional office within 5 working days." Ifeoma's hands began to shake. She rushed to her room and called Barrister Amaka. "Barrister, they're claiming our house is sitting on disputed land." Amaka hissed. "It's a lie. They're trying to push you into fear. We'll go together." 2 days later, they appeared at the office. Inside, a cold-looking man sat behind a dusty desk. He barely looked up. "What's your name?" "Ifeoma Toby." He nodded slowly, flipping through a brown folder. "We received a claim that your house is built on land that was originally marked for government use in 2009. Do you have your land documents?" "Yes," Amaka replied, handing them over. "We also have stamped building permits, survey plans, and receipts." The man examined them, frowning. "These look correct, but we'll still need to verify with the central database." Amaka narrowed her eyes. "Sir," she said carefully, "please do it honestly. This woman has suffered enough." The man smiled faintly. "I only do my job." But as they left, Amaka leaned toward Ifeoma and whispered, "That man is not clean. He's been bribed. I saw it in his eyes." That evening, Rose came to visit again. While sipping tea, she pulled out her phone. "Look," she said, showing Ifeoma a screenshot. It was from a small blog with a headline that read, "Wife of late businessman accused of forging land documents." Ifeoma gasped. "They've gone online?" "Yes," Rose said. "This is what they do. When they can't win with truth, they create lies." Ifeoma stood up. "No, they can't destroy my name." Amaka called again. "We need to act first," she said. "I'm filing a counterpetition and sending a journalist I trust to tell your story this time." Ifeoma took a deep breath. "Do it. I'm ready." The next morning, a video interview was uploaded online. It featured Ifeoma sitting beside her daughters, telling the world her side of the story. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. "My husband died. I didn't just lose the man I love. I lost protection. I lost peace. But I didn't lose my voice." The video went viral. People from across the country started supporting her. The same blog that tried to smear her changed their story within 24 hours. Felix saw the new headline and punched the wall in his office. "Widow wins support as truth unfolds in property battle." He called one of his allies. "I need something stronger," he said. "What are you thinking?" "We're going to destroy her in court. If that doesn't work, we'll destroy her in real life." But back at home, Ifeoma tucked her girls into bed and sat on the edge of her own. She picked up her husband's framed photo and whispered, "I don't know how this story ends, but I'm not backing down." 3 nights later, just after 2 a.m., Ifeoma was woken by a sharp smell. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding. "What was that?" She rushed to the living room and froze. It was coming from under the front door. Her eyes widened. Fire! She turned and bolted back into the room. Zuri! Temi! Wake up! The girls opened their eyes in fear. Mommy, what's happening? Get up! We're leaving the house now. She grabbed her phone, wrapped both girls in a blanket, and ran toward the back door. But before she could open it, her phone rang. It was Nurse Rose. Ifioma. Rose's voice screamed through the phone. Don't go through the front. They poured fuel outside. I just got a call from someone that your house is being targeted. Ifioma's heart dropped. She turned around and ran upstairs with the girls, toward the back balcony. From there, she could see the faint glow of fire at the gate. Some kind of black smoke was rolling across the compound. Zuri cried into her shoulder. Mommy, I'm scared. I know, baby. Just hold me tight. Downstairs, a small explosion popped. Boom. The front step had caught fire. Ifioma turned quickly and called her security man, who lived in a small house near the fence. Open the small gate now, she whispered. I'm coming down from the back. Within seconds, he responded. Yes, Ma. I'm coming. She dashed down the back stairwell and out the kitchen door. Rose's car was already parked outside the small gate. Hurry! Rose shouted. Ifioma pushed the girls into the back seat and jumped in beside them. They drove off just as neighbors started coming out with buckets of water. From the rear mirror, Ifioma could see smoke rising from her compound. Her chest tightened. They wanted her dead. An hour later, they sat in Nurse Rose's small two-bedroom flat. The girls were curled up on the couch, sleeping under a wrapper. Ifioma sat at the edge of the bed in the guest room, shaking. Rose handed her a cup of hot water. You need to calm down. They want me gone, Ifioma whispered. They don't want to win in court. They want to erase me. They failed, Rose said firmly. But now it's not just a legal case. It's a police case. By morning, Barrister Amaka was already at the police station, filing an attempted arson report. This is attempted murder, she told the officer. And I know who's behind it. They wrote a statement and promised to open an investigation. Felix was summoned that evening for questioning. He walked into the station with confidence, arms folded. I don't know anything about fire, he said. That woman is just looking for sympathy. But deep down, he was shaken. He never expected her to survive that. 3 days later, the court hearing resumed. The judge's eyes looked sharper this time. I've read the updated reports. And I've seen the media coverage. Mrs. Ifioma, I hope you and your children are safe. Yes, my lord, she said, standing confidently. Thanks to the police and my neighbor. The judge turned to Felix. You were invited for questioning. I expect full cooperation. Felix nodded. Yes, my lord. Good. Because if I find out this case is being polluted with violence, intimidation, or bribery, I will make sure the guilty party sees the inside of a prison cell. He banged the gavel. Court adjourned. Outside the courtroom, news cameras surrounded Ifioma. One reporter asked, Ma, are you afraid for your life? She paused, then said clearly, No. I'm afraid for the lives of women who don't fight back. That's who I'm doing this for. The crowd clapped quietly. Her daughters watched from the back seat of Rose's car. Zuri leaned into Temi and whispered, Mommy is our superhero. But far away, Felix sat with someone new. A man in a police uniform. I need the court to delay this case again, he said. The officer took the brown envelope and nodded slowly. I understand. The next day, a new letter arrived at Barrister Amaka's office. Due to emergency scheduling, the final hearing is postponed by 3 weeks. Ifioma read it and slammed it down. They're stalling again. Amaka didn't flinch. Then we fight harder. It had been 5 days since the fire attack. The house was damaged but not destroyed. The front porch was black with smoke, the gate partially burned, but the structure held strong, just like her. Ifeoma returned to the house with the girls and Nurse Rose beside her. They all stood quietly staring at the mess. "Mummy," Temi whispered, "can we still live here?" Ifeoma knelt beside her and said, "This is still our home. We're going to clean it, fix it, and make it even better." She didn't know where the strength was coming from. Maybe it was from the pain. Maybe it was from the fear. Or maybe it was the quiet promise she made to her husband the night he died. "I'll protect your girls, no matter what." By afternoon, workers were already fixing the damaged gate. Rose called a painter. A neighbor brought food. One by one, people started showing up to help. They weren't all friends. Some were just people who had read her story online. One woman brought cement. Another gave free security lights. That night, the house glowed again. Not from fire, but from hope. The next day, Ifeoma sat at the dining table with a pen and a notebook. Nurse Rose walked in with a confused look. "You're writing something?" "Yes," she said. "A business plan." "For what?" "I want to relaunch Toby's company. In my name. I'll register it. Start small. Build it again." Rose smiled proudly. "That's the best revenge." Ifeoma wrote the name at the top of the page. IZT Motors. In honor of Ifeoma, Zuri, and Temi. Meanwhile, Felix was losing grip. His lawyer had withdrawn from the case. The police had listed him as a person of interest. His name was being dragged online every day. His brothers began pulling away too. "I told you not to push too hard," one of them said. "Now everything is turning against us." "Shut up," Felix shouted. "We can still win. She's just a woman. How far can she go?" But deep down, even he didn't believe those words anymore. One morning, Ifeoma was heading to the school to drop the girls off when a woman stopped her in the parking lot. She wore a long skirt and a scarf around her head. "Madam, are you the widow from the news?" "Yes," Ifeoma replied. The woman held her hand tightly. "I just want to say thank you. I buried my husband last year, and his family took everything from me. I had no voice. But you're fighting for all of us." Ifeoma felt her throat tighten. She didn't know what to say. The woman continued, "Don't stop. Even if you don't win everything, you've already given us something we never had before, courage." That night, Zuri came into her room while she was writing. "Mummy, can I sleep here tonight?" Ifeoma smiled. "Of course." Zuri crawled into the bed and lay beside her. "Are you scared of anything, Mummy?" Ifeoma looked at the ceiling. "Yes," she said honestly. "But every time I look at you and your sister, the fear disappears." Zuri smiled. "Then we're going to be okay." "Yes, baby," Ifeoma whispered. "We are." But across town, in a hidden hotel suite, Felix made one last phone call. "Are you ready?" he asked. The voice replied, "Yes. Just give me the address and tell me when to move." Felix's eyes darkened. This is the last card. If she survives this, then maybe God really is on her side. It was a bright Saturday morning. Ifeoma had just finished dressing the girls for their school's weekend art class. They were laughing in the living room, Zuri showing Temi how to draw clouds with crayons. Ifeoma stepped outside to meet the tailor who had come to take her measurements. But just as she stepped out of the gate, she noticed something strange. A man, wearing a black hoodie and holding a backpack, was standing across the street. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. He was just staring at her. She paused. The tailor noticed. "Madam, do you know that man?" "No," she said, frowning. Then, the man suddenly turned and walked away. Her heart started to beat faster. Later that evening, she told Nurse Rose about it. Rose's face turned serious. He didn't speak? He didn't walk up to you? No. He just stared like he was trying to memorize my face. Rose stood up and locked the front door. We're not taking chances anymore. Someone sent him. But why now? Ifeoma asked. Because they're desperate. You're winning, and they hate that. The next morning, Ifeoma's gate man received a visitor. A delivery man holding a big box. This is for Madame Ifeoma, he said with a smile. What's inside? The gate man asked. Cake, the man replied. From a fan. She won a free birthday giveaway. But it's not her birthday, the gate man replied, confused. She won online, the man said. It's paid for. The gate man hesitated. Then he took the box and walked to the house. Mama Zuri, he called out. Someone sent cake. Nurse Rose came out first. Cake? From who? They said she won it from one online page. Ifeoma stepped out cautiously. Did you see the sender? No, ma. Just a man in a white van. Nurse Rose immediately stepped forward. Don't open it. She walked up to the box and examined it. There was no brand name, no logo, no sender's name. Just a white box tied with a red ribbon. This is a trap, Rose said. She picked up her phone and called someone. Inspector Dapo? Please come now. We just received a suspicious package. 30 minutes later, the police arrived with a bomb squad. Everyone in the neighborhood stood and watched from a distance. After examining the box, one officer shouted, "Clear the area." Within minutes, the box was opened carefully by a robot arm. Inside was no cake. It was a small explosive wired into a timer, set to go off the moment the ribbon was untied. Ifeoma nearly collapsed. Zuri and Temi were taken into the house, crying softly. Rose held Ifeoma tightly. They were going to kill you, she whispered. But why? Ifeoma asked. We're in court already. What else do they want? They want you silenced before judgment. That evening, the story hit the news. Widow survives bomb attempt in ongoing property dispute. Social media exploded. Thousands of women shared her story. Hundreds of people gathered outside her gate with signs that read, Justice for Ifeoma. Protect Nigerian widows. Shame on tradition that kills. The police released an official statement confirming an active investigation. Felix's name wasn't mentioned, yet, but he was sweating. He received a call from an unknown number. This is Inspector Dapo, the voice said. You've been invited for questioning. Don't bother running. Felix dropped the phone. His hands were shaking. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he whispered. Back at home, Ifeoma stood in her living room holding her daughters close. Nurse Rose sat nearby, her eyes red from crying. But Ifeoma didn't cry. She was calm. Too calm. Because now, she wasn't just fighting for her children. She was fighting for every woman who was ever told she wasn't enough. And this time, she was going to finish it. It was Monday morning when the police stormed Felix's apartment. He was still in bed when the knock came, loud, angry, and final. Open up. Police. Felix jumped up, tripping over his slippers. Before he could even reach the door, it burst open. 6 officers marched in with weapons, a search warrant, and eyes that said no more games. Mr. Felix, you are under arrest for attempted murder, property fraud, and obstruction of justice. What? Attempted murder? He cried. I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't answer. They slapped handcuffs on his wrists and dragged him out as neighbors watched in shock. Some people clapped. Others took videos. But Felix had no more pride left. Everything was falling apart. Back at Ifeoma's house, she received the call from Inspector Dapo. We have him." She didn't speak for a moment. Then she whispered, "Thank you." She dropped the phone, walked into the kitchen where Nurse Rose was helping the girls with their homework, and said calmly, "They've arrested him." Rose froze. "Are you serious?" "Yes. They're holding him and the charges are serious." Zuri looked up. "Mommy, does that mean we won?" Ife knelt down and smiled at her. "Not yet, baby. But we're close." In court the next day, the judge was already aware of the arrest. Barrister Amaka stood with confidence. "My lord, this case has moved beyond property and custom. It is now about criminal acts, intimidation, and a clear attempt to silence a widow." She placed a stack of new evidence on the table: police reports, audio recordings, social media threats, and proof of tampering with land records. "The defendant was arrested yesterday. We ask that the court grants full legal ownership of all properties, businesses, and assets to Mrs. Ifeoma, in her name and in the names of her daughters." There was silence. Then the judge nodded. "Judgment will be delivered in 3 days." That evening, the news spread like wildfire. Widows' Courage forces justice system to act. Final verdict this week. Radio shows discussed her case. Women's groups sent messages of support. Even local churches and mosques prayed for her. Her story had become bigger than just one widow. It was about justice, about change, about fighting a culture that had destroyed so many families for years, and finally standing up to it. The next day, Ifeoma visited her husband's grave for the first time since the funeral. She wore a simple white gown. She held flowers in one hand and her daughters in the other. Standing in front of the grave, she closed her eyes. "Toby," she whispered, "I didn't think I would survive this. But I did. Because of your love. Because of our girls. And because God didn't let me fall." She placed the flowers gently. Then she added softly, "Your name is safe now. And your legacy? I'm going to build it with my bare hands." The wind blew quietly through the trees. The sky was calm. It felt like peace. But behind bars, Felix sat alone. No more calls. No more backup. No more tricks. His lawyer had abandoned him. His brothers had vanished. And now, he was just another inmate. He stared at the wall, still whispering, "She was just a woman, just a woman." And yet, she won. The courtroom was packed. There were no empty seats. Women sat shoulder to shoulder. Some clutched their handbags. Others held their breath. Reporters stood near the windows, cameras waiting to catch history. Ifeoma sat calmly beside Barrister Amaka, her 2 daughters waiting outside with Nurse Rose. The judge entered. The entire room rose. "Sit," he said. He opened a brown folder, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. "This court has listened to testimonies, reviewed documents, examined laws, and considered the weight of tradition versus the right to justice." He paused and looked directly at Felix, who now stood with handcuffs. "Mr. Felix, you brought shame to your brother's name." The silence in the courtroom was thick. The judge continued, "This court finds that Mrs. Ifeoma Toby is the rightful legal heir to all properties, businesses, and assets belonging to the late Mr. Toby. The court also grants full custody and protection of their children. All previous attempts to take control unlawfully, including attempted arson and bribery, are being forwarded for criminal prosecution. This court hereby awards full ownership of the following: the main residence, all 3 shops under Toby Enterprises, the private estate under construction, and legal permission to reopen and relaunch the business under her own name." Then came the final words. "This judgment is final and irreversible. Case closed." Bam! The gavel fell. It was done. The crowd inside the courtroom erupted. Some clapped. Some wept. Others hugged each other. Barrister Amaka stood, turned to Ifeoma, and whispered, "It's over." But Ifeoma shook her head gently. "No," she said with a quiet smile. "It's just beginning." Outside the court, she was swarmed by reporters. One asked, "How do you feel, Madam Ifeoma?" She looked directly at the camera. "I feel like a storm has passed. But I also feel like I just lit a fire, one that can never be put out." Another reporter asked, "What's your next step?" She smiled. "I'm reopening the company. I'm building something that will feed generations. Not just mine, but every woman who was ever told she had nothing." That evening, Ifeoma stood in front of her newly painted shop. A new signboard read, "IZT Motors, built by love, run by strength." Her daughters stood beside her, both holding balloons. She cut the ribbon. And just like that, the second chapter of her life began. Somewhere across town, other widows watched her story on the news. One whispered to herself, "She made it." And another replied, "If she can, maybe I can too." 3 months had passed since the final court judgment. The wounds had not completely healed, but they were no longer open. The fire was gone, the fear had faded, and in its place stood something new. Purpose. Ifeoma now ran IZT Motors from the same office where her husband once sat. The space had changed, freshly painted, with new staff and bright lights. But the spirit was still there. She had hired 3 new female staff, all of them single mothers or widows. "Madam," one of them said during lunch break, "since you took over, everything here feels different. Like home." Ifeoma smiled. "That's what we're building here. Not just a business. A place where people feel safe." But Ifeoma wasn't done. She had seen too much. Too many women like her. Too many voices silenced. Too many houses taken. Too many lives ruined in the name of tradition. So she started something new. The Ifeoma Foundation for Widows. With help from Barrister Amaka and Nurse Rose, she launched a small weekly program where widows could come for legal advice, small business support, counseling, and just someone to listen. They started under a tent behind the workshop. The first week, only 5 women showed up. The second week, 20. By the 4th week, over 100. Some shared their stories. Others just cried. But for the first time, they were seen. One day, during a session, an older woman stood up. She had deep lines on her face, and her voice was shaky. "I lost my husband 6 years ago," she said. "His people took everything, even our clothes. I was sleeping in a church for months." The crowd gasped softly. "But today, after hearing your story, I went back to the village and took back my land. I told them I have someone behind me now. Her name is Ifeoma." The entire crowd stood up and clapped. Ifeoma wiped her tears. Not from sadness. From victory. Later that evening, Rose found her sitting in her office, alone. "You okay?" Rose asked. Ifeoma nodded. "I just can't believe it. Women I've never met now walk with boldness just because I refuse to back down." Rose smiled. "And that's the difference between surviving and leading." Meanwhile, unknown to Ifeoma, her victory was shaking people in high places. Some elders from her late husband's village held a secret meeting. "This woman has embarrassed us," one said. "She stood before the whole nation and insulted our tradition." "She didn't insult it," another replied. "She exposed our wickedness." "What do we do now?" They sat in silence. Because there was nothing they could do. She had already won. Not just in court, but in the hearts of the people. Back in her home, Ifeoma tucked her daughters into bed. "Mommy," Temi asked, "will you teach us how to be strong like you?" Ifeoma kissed her forehead and smiled. "You're already strong. I just helped you see it." Zuri whispered, When I grow up, I want to fight for women too. Ifeoma looked at both girls and said, "Then the world better get ready, because my daughters are coming." It was a rainy Thursday morning. The sky over Port Harcourt was gray, and thunder grumbled like a tired old man. Inside IZT Motors, Ifeoma was going through old files in her husband's former drawer, a drawer she had ignored since his death. She was looking for nothing in particular, but fate had plans. Behind a folder labeled Spare Parts ABA Supplier, she found a sealed brown envelope. On it was her husband's handwriting. "Private, Ifeoma, only open if anything happens to me." Her breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal and pulled out the contents. There were 4 things inside: a long handwritten letter, a photocopy of a land document, a key, a small flash drive. She sat down and unfolded the letter. "My love, if you're reading this, then something has happened. And I'm sorry. I never wanted to leave you alone. You and the girls are my world. But I knew deep down that if anything happened to me, my brothers would try to destroy you. So I made a plan. There's a land in Uyo, hidden from everyone, registered in your name. I bought it secretly because I wanted to build something just for you. A second branch. A bigger one, where women like you could rise. The key inside this envelope is for the small office container on that land. Everything else you need is on the flash drive. Please don't let our daughters grow up in fear. Use this, build this for them. And for every woman they will become." Toby. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. She held the letter close to her chest and cried. Not the kind of cry that breaks you, but the one that builds you. He didn't just love her. He believed in her. Even after death, he had left her a map. By noon, she was on the road to Uyo with Nurse Rose and Barrister Amaka. 3 hours later, they arrived at the plot. It was covered in weeds, but the signboard was still there. TZ Auto Complex, coming soon. They stood silently. Then Rose whispered, "He really meant every word." Ifeoma nodded. This changes everything." They opened the old office container with the key. Inside were construction plans, invoices, and even a vision board pinned to the wall. Toby had dreamed big, but now Ifeoma would finish what he started. 2 weeks later, she gathered her staff for a meeting. "I have something to show you all," she said, connecting the flash drive to her laptop and projecting it on the wall. It was a video. Toby sat in his car, smiling, holding the camera. "If I don't make it, I want the world to know that my wife is not just the love of my life, she's my partner. She's capable. She's brilliant. And this company belongs to her now. You better support her, or stay out of her way." Everyone in the room stood still. Even the new male workers lowered their heads. After the video ended, Ifeoma turned around and smiled. "That settles any doubt, right?" Heads nodded. That weekend, the foundation work for the Uyo branch began. She hired a female contractor. Local women volunteered to help with manual labor. Others offered donations, blocks, cement, tiles. And the news caught fire again. Widow builds nation's first all-female-led auto complex. People came from different states just to see it. Young girls came for internship. Even NGOs started offering support. Ifeoma was no longer just a businesswoman. She was a movement. But in the quiet corner of her office, as she hung her husband's last letter in a frame beside their wedding photo, she whispered, "Toby, I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm flying." It was a peaceful Saturday morning. For once, there was no court date, no angry knock, no smoke, no threat, just sunshine and birdsong. Ifeoma was in the backyard with her daughters and Nurse Rose, planting flowers. Zuri had just buried a small mango seed. Temi was watering it. "Maybe it will grow into a big tree," Temi said. "It will, Ifeoma smiled. Everything that's planted with love grows. Just then, the gate man ran into the backyard, out of breath. Madam, there's a man at the gate. He says he knew your husband. He says it's urgent. Ifeoma's smile dropped. She wiped her hands and stood up. At the gate stood a tall, tired-looking man in his late 40s. He wore a faded brown shirt and carried an old folder. When Ifeoma came out, he removed his cap respectfully. Good morning, Ma. I don't mean to disturb you. My name is Mr. Okizi. I used to work with your husband many years ago. In fact, we started business together. Ifeoma blinked. I've never heard of you. You wouldn't, he said softly. Your husband cut ties with me after a big fallout. I made some bad decisions back then. But I'm not here for money. I came to give you something. He held out the folder. Inside was a single paper, handwritten. It looked old and wrinkled. What is this? It's a confession, he said. Your husband wrote it. And he gave it to me to keep, in case something ever happened to him. Ifeoma stepped back slightly. A confession? Yes. About his family. Back inside the house, she sat with Nurse Rose and Barrister Amaka as they read the note. Her hands trembled again. Ifeoma, I didn't want to tell you while I was alive because I thought I could protect you. But the truth is, my accident may not be an accident at all. My brothers had started acting strangely months before I died. I overheard them talking one night during a family gathering. They mentioned ending the game early, so I wouldn't change the will. I don't have proof. But if anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll protect our daughters. They are your strength. And don't let the darkness win. Ifeoma covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled in her eyes. So he knew, she whispered. He suspected it, Barrister Amaka said. And he tried to warn you. Nurse Rose gritted her teeth. Those men are even more evil than we thought. Amaka added, we can't prove it in court, not with just this note. But it changes everything emotionally. Mr. Okizi stood up to leave. I just wanted to do the right thing, he said. Toby was a good man. I failed him once. I didn't want to fail him again. Thank you, Ifeoma said. You didn't fail him today. That night, as rain fell gently on the rooftop, Ifeoma sat beside her daughter's bed, watching them sleep. She whispered, Toby, I see now. You were fighting the storm long before it hit. But you still believed in me. She stood up and walked into her office. She picked up a pen and opened her journal. At the top of the page, she wrote, The Widow That Wouldn't Fall, Memoirs of Ifeoma Toby. She smiled to herself. Then she began to write. 2 years later, the ribbon was red. The building was white. And the crowd was massive. Women wore branded t-shirts. Daughters clapped. Men stood silently, nodding in respect. Ifeoma stood in front of a tall glass building with the words, IT Legacy Center, empowering widows, training girls, protecting dreams. She wore a simple white gown with her daughters, Zri and Temi, standing on each side of her, now taller, brighter, braver. Behind her was a row of women she had trained. Some had become mechanics. Some were entrepreneurs. Some had become lawyers. All of them had become fearless. A journalist stepped forward. Ma, how did you go from a widow in hiding to the most respected woman in regional business? Ifeoma smiled. I stopped waiting for someone to save me. And I started saving myself, one painful step at a time. The journalist nodded. What advice would you give to any woman listening right now who's still afraid? Ifeoma's voice was steady. Fear is natural, but silence is deadly. If you don't fight for your future, someone will steal it and call it tradition. The crowd clapped. Later that evening, after the ceremony, Ifeoma sat alone in her private office overlooking the entire center. She looked at the wall. A large photo hung there. Toby, smiling in a white shirt, holding baby Zuri. Beside it, a framed quote. She was just a woman until the fire came. Then she became the storm. She smiled to herself and whispered, "You didn't die for nothing." In her hands was her book, The Widow That Wouldn't Fall. It had become a bestseller. But more importantly, it had become a voice. Zuri knocked gently on the door and walked in. "Mommy," she said, now 13, "can I ask you something?" "Anything," Ifeoma replied. "When I grow up, can I run this place?" Ifeoma's eyes softened. "Why?" "Because I want girls like me to feel strong too. I want to be just like you." Ifeoma stood up and hugged her. "No, Zuri," she said softly. "You're going to be better than me." And with that, the circle was complete. Not just for Ifeoma, but for every woman who had been broken and rose. For every child who watched their mother struggle and fight. For every widow who refused to die quietly and lived again. Thank you everyone for watching this story to the end. Tell me in the comments section if you enjoy the story, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you on the next one.